Yeah, I know it kind of sounds like some people who may be listening, and they sound like we're un-American, like we're commies or something, but that's not true. Our government are commies. They're Bolsheviks. And you don't need to look any further than the Communist Manifesto. You don't need to look any further than the policies implemented the last 10 years, or the last 30 years, the last 100 years. And as I said, if it looks like a Zionist and it smells like a Zionist, it is a central banker. And central banks have caused every boom, every bust. They fund both sides of every war. And so we're not un-American. And I say God bless Americans. Oh, yeah, lest we forget who the real enemy is. Yes, God bless Americans one more time. 46 years ago today. 46 years ago today. On June 8, 1967, a U.S. intelligence ship known as the USS Liberty was attacked brutally, suddenly, in international waters by air Navy forces, wearing the designation of the Israeli military. They attacked with the full knowledge this was an American ship, then lied about it. For 40 years, the survivors have been forbidden to tell their story. And I'll pause it just for a moment, because this is live. I'm going to be this is live. I'm only doing one show a week, right? No, it's live and partially a rebroadcast. I'm going to be playing some other clips and stuff. Guys, I got like 10 people here to help me finish siding my house right now. And I fell off my deck yesterday and I can barely move. So what I'm doing is I'm live. I'm here. I'll be monitoring. The first thing I'm going to do, actually, before I play clips from the Liberty, the USS Liberty, our real enemies in the Middle East. We didn't have enemies in the Middle East till we had a friend in Israel. You've got a friend in Israel. Yeah, with friends like Israel, who the fuck needs enemies? So here's a Rothschild. Thanks to my buddy Road Dog for posting this video, talking about how great it is that they warn the people of China who have radios and TVs that they're about to die in a flood.
You mentioned a so-called currency problem. I mean, do you see the day in the next 5 years where it's fully convertible and flexible?
Well, you're talking to a person who's quite old. If I'm around in 5 years, I'd like to think that is the case. I think we've all got to move towards that opportunity, and I think the challenge also is whether we should move towards an international currency, because the speculation and the complexity of currency has caused some of the irritation, not only among the trading nations, but among individuals. But it's not for me to say how it will happen, but I think everyone who knows how to deal with these situations is very cognizant of the problem it takes to get over it, and I think the renminbi will become more convertible, but when it'll come, that is a matter for, obviously, the powers that be.
I want to just change tack slightly. Of course, China's seen, central China, parts of central China, seen the worst drought that they've had in many decades. Now, you've got this investment with your wife in Weather Central. How could that actually help out in terms of planning for things such as droughts?
Well, I think that, first of all, we have 25 broadcast clients currently in China, and we are the #1 provider of broadcast weather graphic solutions in the country. I mean, you had this downpour, I believe, in the last 24 hours, which has caused even people losing their lives, and situations like this. With the detail that we can put up through the technology that we give to the various weather stations, this makes people more aware of it. On the whole, it's a question of giving the opportunity. I mean, we have also launched an operation called My Weather, which gains access to the first truly personalized weather application for the web and mobile devices. You can go up on myweather.com and you can find out within a kilometer of where you are what is going to happen to the weather. It also gives a 10-day forecast. I think we've got to be aware that we're living in a time, I'm not going to get into the subject, which is a huge subject of climate change, but we do have variations of all sorts around the world. Certainly in England we have very precarious weather. We've had a drought up until about 10 days ago. And I think it is important to realize that you can use technology, which is offered by myweather.com, to tell you and be aware of what might happen to you, especially among the farming community.
They don't tell you,
also,
they manipulate the weather.
Interested in helping wind power because it gives sorry.
So, Evelyn, we're just running out
All
of
right, that's the end. Yeah, they don't tell you. Well, yeah, we also manipulate the weather. You know, we're just sick SOBs. Yeah, so we are live, and I'll be here. I can't really move too well, so bear with me, guys. I realize I've kind of dropped the ball with you guys, but I've had a really busy summer, and again, once summer's over, once things slow down again, I'll probably grab a couple of weekday slots, and just because I know I got a lot of friends, man, and you come here, it's early in the morning, and you guys show up just to hear me, so God only knows why. I mean, I can, here we go. Yeah. So, like I said before, and now that obviously Israel has gone rogue from the world, and they don't care. They're on a genocidal rampage now, and it's being justified by scumbags like Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, do the world a favor and hang yourself, dude. Please, do the world a favor. We don't need scum like you. Real humans don't need scum like Fox News, Zionist News. Well, what would you do if Canada was launching missiles into Detroit? Well, if Detroit had annexed Toronto and the residents of Toronto had been walled up and penned in one area, in one small landmass, and they were fighting back, I'd say good for them. And I say good for the Palestinians. And they keep going back to, they want to keep going back to, this is the land given to them by God. What God? Tony Stewart killed somebody last night right up the road from me in a dirt track at near Watkins Glen. Yeah. He's going to be racing today. What God gave you Palestine? And listen, I would fight. I would be with Geronimo too. When the Europeans came here, right? Okay? Don't get me wrong. They fought and lost. Well, Palestine is fighting and losing, but they don't have to because we have the internet. We have the whole world watching. Yes, Tony Stewart ran over somebody last night, killed somebody at a dirt track, running modifieds. So our real friends in Israel, man, people, you got to become vocal about this. So what if they call you an anti-Semite? Fuck the ADL and the SPLC and any Zionist piece of crap and any unwilling dupe. Okay, it's not okay to kill some people, but okay, not okay for some people, for other people. And none of these countries say they want to kill all Jews. They just want to be rid of Israel, which is legitimate. threatened to silence. And we're going to cover some of that today, some of the other treacheries. But Pokerface at pokerface.com and Against the Wall recognize the treachery of the Israeli government. And today, on the 46th anniversary,
I cry for my country, for the pain that it's been through. She's been made to suffer for the profit of a few. Storm clouds are forming, winds of change now touch our shores. I hear forefathers are crying as the dream's been crucified. America, I'll show my love for thee with strength and loyalty. America, I'll show my love for you and all that I do. All that I do. I pray for my country and for friends and family, mourning in their ignorance while staying safe within a dream. I will fight for freedom and raise liberty. I die for my country, slaying corporate dynasties. America, let's show my love for thee with strength and loyalty. America, America, now show my love for you and all that I do. See it in your eyes, love you out inside. You know I'll never let you down as long as I have breath. As I try to change and rearrange the promise that I have with you. And I will pick you up and stand you up and set you back up on your feet. And after all I've left and no one's left, I will always be there. And be there by your side. And never let you down. I cry for my people in this time of tragedy. I just want some answers, so the truth will set us free. And the truth will set us free. I say hallelujah.
oh man, I love you guys. That's Poker Face Prayer for America.
The mass murder.
Oops. Yeah, today we're going to I guess we're going to highlight some of the treachery of our friends. I mean, they say, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer. I mean, I don't know how much closer you can be than our enemies in the media, enemies in our government, and our enemies in our schools and universities. How much more close? How closer? How much more close? How much more closely can we hold them?
The Levant affair operation in Egypt known as Operation Susanna, in which Egyptian, American, and British-owned targets in Egypt were bombed in the summer of 1954. In the early 1950s, the U.S. was becoming friendlier with Egypt and was moving to influence the British to leave the Egyptian Suez Canal, which they had manned for almost 20 years. The apartheid state of Israel would not tolerate the British leaving, and elements within Israel began planning a variety of terrorist attacks on British, Egyptian, and American targets. These attacks would then be blamed on so-called Muslim extremists. This would incite the anger of the British and the Americans towards Egypt and Islam and sour the burgeoning relationship between Egypt, America, and Britain. This plan for a series of false flag terrorist attacks was codenamed Operation Susanna. A group of Egyptian Jews was recruited to carry out the attacks. Jews in the diaspora that are recruited are known as Sayanim. The first bomb went off on July 2nd when a post office in Alexandria was firebombed. On the 11th of July, the Anglo-Egyptian Suez negotiations, which had been blocked for 9 months, got underway again. Despite the British assuring Israel that stockpiled weapons would not be given to the Egyptians, on July 14th, the Jewish terrorists firebombed U.S. information agency libraries in Cairo and Alexandria. However, that same day, a phosphorus bomb exploded prematurely in one of the terrorists, Philip Nathanson's, pocket just as he was about to enter the British-owned Rio Cinema in Alexandria. His arrest and a subsequent confession led to the breakup of the whole ring. However, while the plot was being investigated, the Zionist Jewish terrorists started fires in 2 Cairo cinemas, in the Central Post Office, and the railway station. After the plot was uncovered, many tried to spin it as an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. These ad hominem attacks are a common tactic of the Zionists. For more information on this, please read the Jewish American patriot Jack Bernstein's book, The Life of an American Jew in Racist, Marxist Israel. This honest, honorable, and courageous Jew was subsequently assassinated by Mossad. As the trial of the Jewish terrorists became more and more public, Israel was forced to do damage control. They claimed that the Egyptians were tipped off and allowed the attacks to happen. They also singularly scapegoated the defense minister Pinhas Lavon to prevent the exposure of the real group inside the apartheid state of Israel who planned Operation Susanna and several other false flag terrorist attacks. But this would not be the last time America's so-called ally and friend and recipient of over $150 billion in aid would attack them.
The demolition team set off when you see the old demolitions of these old buildings. It looks like one of those scenes of an old building.
All right, and that's the Levant affair. These are the verifiable, well-accounted activities of the Marxist Zionists in Israel. Their treachery is unlimited. We thought we were being attacked by enemies, but we weren't. We're being attacked by friends. From World War II to Iraq.
I saw the mass murder that Israel perpetrated on the Mama. Yes, I saw 5 of the martyrs, one with the bullet right in his head. I was involved in disarming
in Iraq.
2 Israeli commandos. One of the Israeli commandos I was able to remove his pistol. I took that pistol, I removed the bullets. They were live. I'm an ex-Marine. I served in the war. I know what live rounds are. Those were live rounds. I took the gun and I hit it and I gave the bullets to someone else. I was involved in disarming another Israeli commando, his assault rifle. We were able to separate him from his assault rifle. There were 3 Israeli commandos that we had complete control over. We had them in our possession. They were surrounded by at least 100, maybe 200 of us on the ship. They had no weapons. They were under our complete control. And I can tell you they looked at us like we were them. And they thought we were going to do to them what they did to us. They thought they were going to die. They thought they were going to die. But of course, we let them go.
450 members of Israel Armed Forces telling their government, hell no, we won't go. To the West Bank or Gaza, that is, declaring that while they would defend Israel with their lives, they will not serve in an army of occupation and have opted to do time in prison rather than a tour of duty in Palestine.
Your immediate contact reflect that of a depraved lunatic with a bloodlust nothing can save. I'm amazed at the way in which Goyim behave, bowing to Zionists who vow to destroy and enslave. There's only one government in the Middle East who attacked America 2 times at least. They bombed a ship and left 34 deceased. With friends like them, you don't need enemies. Anytime somebody call attention to fake news and name the owners and they automatically hate Jews. Anybody come at me with that and they straight lose. I pay dues too ready to fall for the great rules. Understand the mechanism by which they operate. For their agenda to try, there's gotta be a lot of hate. I'm amazed at the ways in which you fell victim. Obediently believing the lies you've been given. Hollywood News got you lost in the herd. This just in, all of your reports are absurd. I will expose the source of the scourge and never apologize for divorce from my words. Stand up, say no to the insanity. Roll some test tickets and show some humanity. Your arrogance is outside the galaxy. It's not about reality, it's all about a salary. Central banks stole all your dues. Hollywood pins dropping clues. The mainstream media confused. They are all run by Zionist Jews. The central bank stole all your dues. Hollywood been dropping clues. The mainstream media confused. They are all run by Zionist Jews.
I can answer you with 2 words. A war crime. My government is now engaged in a massive war crime, killing hundreds of innocents. It's not just a war crime against the Palestinians. It's a crime against the Israeli people. On behalf of thousands of Israelis that are demonstrating right now in the streets of Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, and in many other places, with Palestinians, with multinationals, people from all kind of background and all parts of the Israeli society are completely ashamed against this crazy assault.
That's payday. Listen, all the clips I'm playing today are from friends of mine. I didn't have time. Quite frankly, I have to admit that it had slipped my mind until probably Friday that this was the anniversary of the Liberty. And I tried to get a hold of Phil Turney last night. It was kind of late. Nobody answered the phone. So, these are all old men now. These are all old men who have relived June 8th, 1967 over and over and over and over again, day after day after day. These men have to see their friends dead, blown in half, in their minds whenever they close their eyes. It can't go away. It won't go away. Well, I wasn't able to get, we'll have a Liberty Survivor at Freedom Palooza this year. But here's some advice for anyone thinking about joining the military to go protect the interest of the Zionist bankers around the world.
I say this to my own kids. I've got one in the Army, and I got another thinking about it. I know it's a tough economic choice to make these days. I know the jobs suck. I know school is too expensive for a lot of people. I know they make it attractive. But just you have to continue to remember what it is that they're doing. And that organization does not exist to give you money for school. That organization exists to to assert the political will of the United States government against other people by force of arms. And what they do is not like it's portrayed in the movie. They're not sending you out there to be a hero. They're sending you out there to be a bully. You know? They're not sending you out there to be a hero. That's not what it's really about. It's never been about that. Never been about that. You know, the fact that some people fight back and put you in danger is also part of the equation. But you know, it's not. The Iraqis never presented any threat to this country. And if we leave, those Iraqis don't present any threat to this country after we leave. Why put yourself in a position to go over there and be forced by a circumstance not of your choosing to take the life of another human being who's a fellow stranger? Because they're not some evil caricature like you've seen in the films and all that stuff. They're people. They have mothers, they have fathers, they have sisters, they have brothers, they have children. You know, there's people that love them just like there's people that love them.
And we all have the same enemy.
Those people breathe. It's like breathe. Maybe not as dramatic and as exciting. Clear cut. Easy to understand as sort of simple binary world of good and evil that get painted for you, but that's not the way the real world is. And in the real world, again, you have to live with the consequences of the decisions the rest of your life. So I served in 8 conflict areas. You know, I raised my right hand 8 times, or no, I raised my hand 5 times during the course of one career, and took an oath. And that oath was to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. You know, I went to 8 conflict areas. I never met a single person who was an enemy of the United States Constitution. Not one. And no enemies of the Constitution. I did spend a lot of time going out there again and becoming a political instrument, for transnational corporations, and to preserve American, military and political supremacy around the world. But that's not in the oath. That's not in the oath. There was nobody threatening the Constitution in Vietnam. There was nobody threatening the Constitution in Grenada, Guatemala, El Salvador, Colombia, Peru, Somalia, Haiti. I went to all those places. I never met anybody that was a threat to the Constitution or the principles of the Constitution, for that matter. Just met people. Just met people, and they put me in circumstances where I had to do a lot of things that I wish I didn't have in my head right now.
And there you have it. Oh, Christ. Let's see. I got to grab something to throw on real fast. Huh. I'll have to answer that in a little while. Let's see. Yeah, and there you have it. That's from a staff sergeant, American military. We'll move on. At some point today, I'll probably get into some more of the treachery. We're going to stick with the theme, though, right now. For 9 hours. All right, now I have a couple of clips that I'm going to play, and these are all and I'll give due to where the due is where due is due. I'll give credit to where due is due. I'll give credits due. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. Ernie Gallo, also, of course, Phil Turney, are both survivors, USS Liberty. Now, earlier this year, actually, was a national summit to reassess the U.S.-Israeli special relationship. Obviously, none of our politicians were there. They all dropped to their knees to our Marxist Zionist overlords. They swear their fealty to the bankers. to the purveyors of sodomy and depravity. Now, this may not be what some people want to hear today. And I could spend the 2 hours giving you my thoughts, but really what I'm going to do is try to spend this 2 hours letting people who have to remember this in their own mind and see it when their eyes close talk about it. So, the special relationship with Israel.
Liberty Veterans Association, the LVA.
This is Ernie Gallo.
I am the LVA's current president. Our mission statement states that we strive to have the truth told to the American public about the Israeli attack. That is, the attack was brutally deliberate. Personally, I've been to over 45 countries in my life travels, and it does not get any better than the United States for a system of government. Ergo, my love for country and the Liberty incident has opened my eyes. Our Creator gave our founding fathers the grace to create the most humane form of governing, and is threatened from within. I have taken an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, and no one has told me to stand down. It is vitally important that our tripartite form of government remains intact, providing checks and balances. My focus is not only with the Johnson administration and the military, but Congress now, during, and present. I'm not critical towards the American public, as they have been deceived by our government, Israel, and the media, which is influenced and controlled by Israeli supporters. To wit, laws have been broken or thwarted to maintain our relationship with Israel, and I'll provide you with details as I know them.
There Soviets that were in the area, and I was
Precedent and American naval history. We'll be back with our guest, James Ennis, after this short break. Our guest today is James Ennis, author of Assault on the Liberty, which recounts the devastating attack on the United States Navy ship, the Liberty, during the Six-Day War. Mr. Ennis, a retired U.S. naval officer, was serving as a lieutenant on the USS Liberty at the time of the attack. He's also one of the creators of the USS Liberty Memorial website, located at ussliberty.org.
Okay, now I'm going to stop it right here just for a second. And you can get the book Assault on the Liberty. James Ennis wrote, James Ennis Jr. Now you have to look deep. You have to dig a little deep, and you have to use some of your own deductive capability here. But let me just use an example of a couple of admirals and their sons. One a treacherous coward. The other an actually very growing in popularity with a growing underground following. Both their fathers were admirals. Talking about Senator McCain's father, and I'm talking about Jim Morrison's father, Rear Admiral Morrison. One quashed the USS Liberty, and the favor was returned to him. One wanted to expose the attack on the USS Liberty, and that favor was returned to him also. It's my opinion that Jim Morrison was murdered because his father's stance on the USS Liberty, the attack, the treacherous attack by our friends, allegedly, in Israel. And the other has become a national hero. A man who's killed more Americans than Al-Qaeda, John McCain.
Mr. Ennis, thanks very much for being with us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Mr. Ennis, for those who aren't familiar with this attack, if you could put it in some context for us by telling us first when it occurred and where was the Liberty at the time of the attack?
This was on June 8th, 1967, just a bit over 40 years ago, in the eastern Mediterranean, along the Gaza Strip, which was the border between Israel and Egypt. We were sent out there. We were an intelligence ship, and we were sent out there to collect radio signals, actually primarily of the Soviets that were in the area. And I was officer of the deck on the ship that morning, 7 o'clock until noon, and so I brought the ship to the coast, and at about 12 miles from the coast, right parallel the course, slowed the ship to 5 knots. We just proceeded down the coast.
What was going on at the war at that time? The war had begun a few days before the attack on 5 June, correct?
The Six-Day War is what he's talking about.
Quiet. We knew that over the mountains there was some shooting going on, but where we were was quite peaceful. The visibility was unlimited. High in the sky, airplanes were flying over apparently toward the war. And
Israel had been successful at that point in the war?
Very much. In the first 30 minutes or so of the war, which was initiated by the Israelis, with a surprise attack, destroyed just about every Arab airplane in the Middle East, so that there was almost no opposition by the time we arrived 4 days later.
They had attacked Egypt, Syria, Jordan, all suddenly and by surprise?
Yes. Nasser had been making some noises on the coast, but he had no intention of invading, but being very bellicose. And Israelis have admitted since then that they knew he was not going to attack, and they used that as an excuse to capture more Arab land. So that was what was going on, and they didn't want the United States to know of their plan.
They had a particular plan that actually was an attack that was going to go on the morning of 8 June, isn't that correct?
They planned to invade the Golan Heights, capture the Golan from Syria on the 8th of June.
And this was not anticipated by the international community? This would have been a surprise?
It was feared. I talked to Secretary of State Dean Rusk afterward, when my book was published, and he told me that they were afraid that Israel was going to do that, and they were trying to persuade them to hold back. Rusk said he stayed on the phone with the Israelis all night, urging them to keep their forces where they were and not to escalate the war because they were afraid the Russians would get into it.
So the U.S. was neutral in this war?
Officially, we were neutral. We appeared to be siding more with the Israelis than anything else, but we weren't taking an active role in this shooting.
And the Liberty was in international waters at the time?
It was. We were just past the 12-mile limit, which the Egyptians claimed as their territorial waters. Israel, I think, claimed 3, or perhaps it was the other way, but we made a point to stay just beyond the 12-mile limit, where we wouldn't be seen by either side as within their territorial waters.
Well, now, as you said, you were coming on deck for the 0800 watch, and this is in military time, maybe for civilians, 8 o'clock in the morning. You came on a little early, as I note from your book. What was the situation on the ship at that time?
It was the custom to relieve the watch closer to 7 or 7:15, just so that the off-going watch could have breakfast. I was officer of the deck from 7:15 or so until 12. This situation was quite calm. We had since it was a bright sunny day, and there was no sign of hostilities near us. We had men who were off duty sunbathing on deck. It was pretty relaxed. And around 11 o'clock, suddenly there was a puff of smoke on the coast. We didn't know what that was, but thick black smoke coursed down the coast in the wind. So we learned much later that was an ammunition dump that had blown up. But it really had nothing to do with us.
The officer you were relieving mentioned that you had some aircraft visiting you before you came up.
We did. Before I came on watch, around 6 o'clock, there was an Israeli flow Israeli reconnaissance plane that circled us. As soon as I took the watch, another airplane circled us. And then every 45 minutes all morning, about every 45 minutes, an Israeli recon plane or a pair of jet aircraft would come out and circle us 2 or 3 times.
Did you believe that those aircraft could identify the ship and its cover?
We knew they did because, remember, we were an intercept ship, and we had 100 men down below who were with earphones listening to the radio, and they heard these jet pilots and the recon pilots as they circled us. Each time they would radio their headquarters and say, we are circling in a ship with an American flag and men sunbathing on deck. So it was very clear that
they had reconned the Liberty. They knew that it was an American ship. Much like Pearl Harbor, our leaders knew what was going to happen.
They knew who we were, and their headquarters knew who we were.
In fact, the flag was significant. You caused it to be changed.
We had been steaming across the Mediterranean at high speed at 17, 18 knots for nearly a week, and the flag had gotten dirty from smoke and tattered from the wind. So the first thing I did when I took the watch at 7 o'clock was to order that flag replaced. The signalman quartermaster protested because he said, that's my last flag. I don't have any more clean flags. And I told him, I don't care. We are going to show our brightest, cleanest colors in here so that these planes circling us know exactly who we were. I was relieved at 12, but I came back at 1 o'clock for general quarters. So I came on this time as junior officer of the deck. Well, another officer was at OD, but I still had the con, means I was driving.
So you were a naval lieutenant, which would be, for those who don't know, Navy rank would be comparable to an Army captain. So you were just one grade below the executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Phil Armstrong.
That's right.
So you were on the bridge?
I was on the bridge again from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock. So at that point, I was junior officer of the deck, and I was still driving. During the morning, I was usually the only officer on the bridge. But for general quarters, the captain and several other officers were there for that occasion. We finally we finished our general quarters drill at just before 2, and suddenly, as I was being relieved, radar picked up 3 very fast boats approaching the ship, just coming over the horizon 15 miles away. And immediately over the top of the boats, we picked up 3 jet aircraft approaching the ship. I was just being relieved, and I went with the ship's photographer up to the next deck, the 4th deck of the ship, to try to take some pictures of these approaching jets. We had been, as I said, circled all day, and these were appeared to be more of the same. So I went up on the 04 level, and along the starboard side of the ship, and the right side, I could see these jets passing down the side. They turned left and made a big 180-degree left circle and came straight down the center line, straight at us. The photographer with a Nikon and a long lens on it was watching them through the lens, taking pictures, and suddenly they started firing. We had men in all 4 gun mounts. There were just 50 caliber machine gun mounts. But from where I stood in the 04 level, I could see the direct hits to all the gun mounts as men were just blown literally high into the air from the explosions. And then the first airplane passed overhead, and I looked out, and there was the second one turning to make its run. I had been hit by shrapnel from the first explosion, which broke my leg about 5 inches above the knee. My leg looked like it had 2 knees. Yet, remarkably, I was standing on one leg and thrown up against the railing, so I wasn't knocked off my feet. Everybody around me had fallen and was bleeding. I was able to, on one good leg, I was able to hop down the ladder into the pilot house on the next deck, where about that time the second airplane hit and blew more holes in the pilot house. There was blood and men on deck everywhere, and captain calling to send a message to the 6th Fleet that were under attack.
So Captain McGonigal, who later received the Congressional Medal of Honor, I understand, he immediately sent a request for help?
That's right. Now, that was difficult as the attacking airplanes were jamming our radios, so it took a few minutes to get a message out. because all we heard was buzzsaw noises on the radio frequencies that we wanted to use. But we did, within about 10 minutes, we got a message out, and we got a reply from the carrier Saratoga that was about 300 miles away, and they said, we're sending support immediately. The remarkable thing there was that we later talked to Captain Tully. He said as soon as his airplanes got to the horizon, he got a message from Washington saying to get those airplanes back.
Why did they call them back?
We have been asking for 40 years why they called them back. The official story is that they called them back because the attack was over. Well, that wasn't true at all. There were two separate launches of aircraft. The first one that was launched almost immediately, those were called back. It was more than an hour later that they sent another set of aircraft to our aid, and those also were immediately called back. Now, the Navy story is that there was only one launch of aircraft that as soon as they were launched, they got an apology from Israel saying that it was all over and that we didn't need help anymore, so they recalled the jets.
Now, I understand that, yes.
That conveniently ignores the entire...
At that point, there was already a 40-foot hole in the Liberty. She'd already taken hundreds and hundreds of cannon rounds. And so, yeah. At that point, they being the Israelis, were sure that ship was going to sink.
Hour and a quarter or so that we were under attack.
Well, you were first attacked, I understand, by Mirage fighter bombers, but they were then joined by Mystère jets that went to napalm.
That's right. The Mirages actually exhausted all their ammo and armament, and they left the area and were immediately replaced by Mystéres carrying more cannon and napalm, and so they continued the...
Isn't it unusual to hit a ship with napalm?
I think it is. They may have carried napalm because they used it a lot against the tanks in the desert, but it's probably unusual, but it's also pretty lethal since they'd already punched close to 821 6 and 8 inch holes in the ship with their rockets. The napalm would then slosh into the rocket holes and cause fires inside. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, you say in your book, quote, the entire superstructure of the ship burst into a wall of flames, end quote.
That's quite so.
And you had quite a few casualties at this point, but this wasn't the end of the attack. You then, 1424, which would be 224 in civilian time, you had a surface attack from boats, right?
Well, that was 235, actually, that the torpedo hit, and that was followed immediately. They fired 3 torpedo boats, the ones that we had first seen when we first saw the aircraft. Those arrived at 2:35, fired 5 torpedoes. Fortunately, missed with 4 of them, and one of them blew a 40-foot hole in the side of the ship, killed 25 more men in addition to the 9 who were already dead and dying from the aircraft attack. That flooded the large center compartment of the ship that held our intercept team, and very nearly took us down. The ship took on a considerable list from all the water we had.
You're right, they continued to circle the ship after launching the torpedoes?
Yeah, and that's where, you get into the deliberateness of the attack. The Israelis' story, which they told the United States, was that at that point, as soon as they launched the torpedo, they saw our American flag, recognized as American, and never fired again. And that is total falsehood. They fired the torpedo. 3 boats came within 50 feet of the ship by the stern, where our name was marked in large English letters, hovered around there for a few minutes, and then they circled us on and off for the next 40 minutes, firing at anything that moved. They fired on stretcher bearers on the main deck and bridge personnel. By this time, we had an oversized American flag. The one that I had hauled up had been shot down, was immediately replaced with the holiday colors, which was about 8 by 12 feet. So that flag was clearly shown, and our name in English. I mean, consider the difference between an Arab warship and an American Navy ship. We have our name in English on the stern and 10-foot high letters GTR-5 on the bow. They claimed they thought we were the Egyptian horse carrier El Quasar, which was waiting to be scrapped, port at Alexandria.
They claim that they mistook the Liberty for an Egyptian ship that was being scrapped?
Yes. The El Quasar was a horse carrier for the Egyptian cavalry. It was 265 feet long compared to our 450 or 540. It looks nothing whatsoever like us, and they certainly knew that it was in port being scrapped. But when we didn't think as we were supposed to, they needed an excuse, so they said that they thought we were the El Quasar. You
also lowered life rafts in anticipation of a need to abandon ship. What happened then?
We launched life rafts at 3:15. They immediately came closer, machine gunned the life rafts in the water, took one of them aboard, and left for a few minutes with that because we were being promised that 6th Fleet aircraft were on the way, and they were obviously afraid that they would be counter the jets from the 6th Fleet, so they left. At that point, they started sending, "We're so sorry, we thought it was an Egyptian ship. We apologize for the mistake," messages.
How many casualties did the Liberty suffer?
34 dead and 174 wounded. That number varies because there have been men within the last couple of years who have gotten Purple Hearts for wounds that weren't recognized for Purple Hearts at the time, but there's 174 wounded and 34 dead.
So as I understand it, that's about 2/3 of the whole crew was either dead or wounded?
Yeah, we had 297 men total.
Did you know they were Israelis by the end of the attack?
Most of us did. The airplanes that attacked us were not marked, and that's another indication that it was a deliberate attack. Nobody saw markings on the attacking aircraft. The attacking motor torpedo boats apparently had a small Star of David flying, but that was not seen by very many people, if any. That little was known about who was attacking us until we heard it on the radio from picked up a broadcast from the BBC.
But the Pentagon and the Johnson administration accepted the Israeli apology and their explanation that it was not on purpose?
They accepted the apology. They declined to accept the explanation. Dean Rusk himself, the Secretary of State, has said many times that they accepted the apology for diplomatic reasons. They never believed their story about it being an accident or why it.
Nonetheless, there was a court of inquiry that was held immediately afterward. Did it result in finding that Israel was culpable?
The court of inquiry was told what to find. They concluded that the attack was deliberate and that Israel knew they were attacking an American ship. That was not the finding that they published because they were ordered by the White House to publish a false report. There is now online in my website and elsewhere a sworn statement by the legal counsel to the court who says they lied. They published a false report, and even that report was changed in Washington. The members of the court signed it and sent it to Washington, where pages were removed and other pages were rewritten.
There was an independent commission that studied the Liberty, headed by the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Thomas Moore, in 2003, and he said, quote, there has been an official cover-up without precedent in American naval history, end quote.
That's right. He published that report, which contradicts the official report and concludes that it was a deliberate attack.
Have any surviving members of the crew ever had the opportunity to testify about the attack before a congressional committee?
No. We have been asking for 40 years for an opportunity to testify. In fact, that's one of the ironies of this thing. There's a bankruptcy magistrate in Florida who spends his time trying to disprove the story of the Liberty. He's written a book in which he claims that there have been 11 or 12 official government investigations, 5 congressional investigations, that they have all proven and concluded that the attack was a tragic accident, and that is a tragic lie. There has never been a government investigation that concluded that the attack was an accident, as the Israelis claim.
Would you, at that slight date, 40 years after the attack, would you like to see a congressional investigation?
We still ask for that. Nobody will give us that. We thought when the attack first occurred that the lies that were obviously being told by the Israeli government would be corrected when we had a chance to testify. But we were never allowed to testify. We were not allowed to tell our stories even to the Navy Court of Inquiry. And after that, no member of Congress ever held hearings. Our story was never legally, officially told anywhere in government.
Can I ask you one last question? And that I take that from an excerpt from the commission headed by Admiral Thomas Moore, 2003. He said, quote, "A danger to our national security exists whenever our elected officials are willing to subordinate American interest to those of any foreign nation," end quote. Could you give me your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's absolutely the case. In a situation like this, here we have a small foreign power that deliberately attacked an American ship, killed 34 men, and Congress won't even talk to those 34 men. They take at face value the excuse by the attackers and don't even listen to or allow the victims to tell the truth about what happened. The only way we have ever had a chance to tell a story is in places like this radio show and an occasional book or letter to the editor. The people who attacked us are much better financed and more numerous, and every time we tell a story, the bad guys are out there calling us liars. We can prove everything we say, and Congress won't listen to us. We don't have an opportunity to tell our story very much.
Well, thanks very much for being with us today, Mr. Ness, to tell the story. This is Ken McDermott Rowe, and I've been talking to Mr. James Ennis about the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty during the Six-Day War. I'll be back in a moment with some final thoughts.
I think it's time the people take the country back through their representative
Hey, Mr. Politician, living on that hill, living in that lot of luxury on we the people's bill. Don't have a clue how the other half lives, and that is a shame. It's time to stop the tyranny. You keep pushing through your bills, calling for revolution, calling for it now. It's time to save our Constitution while we still got our guns in our hands. There is a farmer starving on their land. The rancher tries to be his cattle and sheep on we the people's land. Try and live as a free man. Your body is illegal anymore. Try to stop these thugs from stealing what can God handed down. Calling for revolution, calling for it now. It's time to save our Constitution while we still got our guns in our hands. turn back the clock of a tyranny? Or if we don't, then who will do it for ourselves? And how about our children? What kind of future will we give them? And if we won't, we'll wake up slaves on the world of that nation, calling for a revolution, calling for it now. It's time to save our Constitution while we still got lots of guns in our hands. Calling for a revolution, calling for it now. It's time to save our Constitution while we still got the guns in our hands. While we still got the guns, still got the guns in our hands.
Say that I was guilty of the crimes that they convicted me of. And I told them to shove it up their ass. Excuse my mouth. You keep your pardon. I wasn't guilty. And now, keep this in mind. No physical evidence against Jim Traffic. I want to say this to you. For the learned person that's listening to this, being the number one target of the Justice Department and the IRS since 1983, came out of trial, a 6-year investigation of me. $15 million to the taxpayers. That's what it cost me. Over 250 federal agents following me around. All the time that our World Trade Center and Pentagon were being attacked. They were following Jim Traffic. They voluntarily admitted at the trial that they made no tapes, audio or video on Jim Traffic. Now, if you believe that, then I've got some swampland in Florida. The reason is very simple. It's like a former Secret Service guy, Mike Robertson, said. Trafficking committed no crimes. And he could have used all their boxes of tapes against them. They're all exculpatory. That's where it is. And now it's coming out to pass where several people admitted they were pressured to lie. Several admitted to others confidentially that they lied. The government wouldn't allow their testimony. Now a juror is very upset because he wasn't able to hear the testimony of those people. So here you have a man that was convicted, if I were guilty of those crimes, with no evidence. Unbelievable. Well, I wasn't locked out politically. I was put in prison. They couldn't have beaten me with a gun. Now they redistricted here. I have no money to keep me off the ballot with a funny count. There's only 7 weeks left with no campaign fund. So they did a pretty good job on me. And we've got a corrupt system. I was number one target in the country, the Justice Department, the Internal Revenue Service, and the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. I brought home John Deminick from Israel. Prison. They have a stranglehold on it. I said that on the Greta Van Susteren show when I got out. I was probably the hottest interview in the country. But when I made that statement, you didn't see me on TV no more.
I believe that Israel has a powerful stranglehold on the American government. They control both members of the House and the Senate. They have us involved in wars of which we have little or no interest. Our children are coming back in body bags. Our nation is bankrupt over these wars. And if you open your mouth, you get targeted. And if they don't beat you at the poll, they'll put you in prison.
Explain to me what you see as, why you target or why you have a grudge against the Israelis.
The grudge is not necessarily a grudge. It's an objective assessment that no one will have the courage to speak about. They're controlling much of our foreign policy. They're influencing much of our domestic policy. Wolfowitz, as Undersecretary of Defense, manipulated President Bush #2 back into Iraq. They pushed definitely to try and get Bush before he left to move into Iran. We're conducting an expansionist policy of Israel, and everybody's afraid to say it. They control much of the media, they control much of the commerce of the country, and they control powerfully both bodies of the Congress. They own the Congress.
Are you an anti-Semite?
No, I'm not. That's exactly what they're going to say, and I expect that. What I am is an American. You see, I think America comes first. and we have a one-sided foreign policy in the Mideast.
When I made that statement, you didn't see me on TV no more. Now, let's just think about how powerful they are. Look.
Just think how powerful. Yeah, let's just think how powerful they are. They have the ability through their APAC to lobby Congress, to lobby government, through their hate groups, the ADL and the SPLC. They can label and name any American organization, any American community or gathering radical, anti-government, right-wing.
This weekend, a few troublemakers turned a peaceful protest against Wall Street greed into a violent burst of chaos. The troublemakers...
Has it ever occurred to you that you're just as much a prisoner as I am?
Oh, my dear chap, of course, I do too much. We're both lifers. I am definitely an optimist. That's why it doesn't matter who number one is. It doesn't matter which side runs the village. It's run by one side or the other. But both sides are becoming identical. What in fact has been created an international community. A perfect blueprint for world order. When the sides facing each other suddenly realize that they're looking into a mirror, they will see that this is the pattern of action.
You've never heard of it?
Once I get to my big
Next step, human life.
you will know my name, my face.
That is just the beginning.
Once I slice the jeans I need,
I will own every morsel, every kernel.
all your seeds, indeed, indeed.
You can't call these seeds.
One second. Where creative chemistry works wonders for you. The patent.
There was a time I did not want you to know my name, but now a greater time has come and some things have changed. I got a greater green of thumb and some brand new strains. I keep it purple as a plum when I handle things. If you don't want to pay the price, then it's not too nice. For a little grain of rice, I will charge you twice.
To attack an international, or I should say, a humanitarian convoy in international waters. I think everyone can agree that there's no possibility, there's no way to justify using armed force against what were clearly unarmed humanitarians trying to relieve an illegal siege of Gaza.
And the trick will continue.
It's a matter of controlling of the matter, exactly. It's a matter of...
The House Committee on Assassinations was trying to say that Oswald had done it, and with a hole in the back of the head, if you're being...
They got to know at some point. Not a war, it's a pageant. We need a theme, a song. This weekend, a few troublemakers.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. My finger just started. Let's finish this clip here.
They're controlling our foreign policy.
they're controlling our domestic policy.
Yes, and I believe they are.
Hear me now.
I believe they control the Senate and the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
That's insane.
And they're controlling our foreign policy.
Congressman, that's conspiracy.
But does the U.S. follow Israel's orders? Abso-freaking-lutely. If they say, hey, don't do this, the Bush doesn't do it. It's unbelievable. You think any other ally has that kind of power over the U.S.? Not even.
The harlot, the United States of America, who brings the beast Israel to power, is starting to buck against her master, which will end with Israel destroying this country when it no longer needs it.
Because they are us and we are them. On this subject, there is only one line of division. Only one. It's not a line of division between Muslims and Jews. It's not a line of division between Arabs and Jews. It is a line of division between those who stand for the equality of all and those who stand for the supremacy of some. And that government...
Can't shut my mouth till the smoke clears out. Am I high? Perhaps I'ma rip this shit till my bone. The left till the roof comes on, till the lights go out.
All right, moving right along. Back in 2006, more treachery. And then we're going to go back to the memoriam. In 2006, I talked about, and a lot of other people talked about, Israeli snipers killing U.S. troops in Iraq, pinning the blame on insurgents. I covered this a couple of times. What, oath, and when? I mentioned it. Trying to blame it on insurgents in order to piss off American soldiers. So slaughter, so that the animosity can continue. Things can't get better. There's more than enough evidence to point to the fact that Mossad, with the CIA, are and were operating inside Iraq. Remember the video Anderson Cooper showed of snipers killing U.S. troops in Iraq? Well, it turns out those were Mossad, Israeli troops dressed as Arabs, as Iraqi forces. That's treachery. Those are our enemies. Banking, education. Those are the two things that need the most reform. Mossad killing soldiers in Iraq to enrage the troops. Pressure on Rear Admiral Morrison. It's my contention that his son Jim Morrison was murdered by Mossad, by his Mossad harlot girlfriend. Hollywood too. We have enemies on TV. They control our TV. They control our news. They control our universities and our schools. They control our banking system. They have great influence on our foreign policy. The ADL and the SPLC work with the Department of Homeland Security and Northcom and all the different fusion centers around the country to link, to label, to call patriotic Americans who may or may not have had enough, but who have stood up to say, that's wrong, we see something wrong. To have them labeled as bigots, anti-Semites. right-wing, radical, homegrown terrorists. The list goes on and on. The list does indeed go on and on and on. Anyone who speaks up, who exposes the Marxists, or AIPAC, or the Anti-Defamation League, or the Southern Poverty Law Center, is labeled a terrorist. Is labeled a hate monger. Is labeled an anti-Semite. Is labeled, why are we allowing ourselves to be labeled by foreign influence? To all the people who love their country, to all the people who love their humanity, this here song. This is our answer. This is my salute. This is my dedication and my oath to my friends, to my brothers. And this is our message from Poker Face, Against the Wall, and everybody who listens, to the ADL, to the SPLC, to AIPAC, and to Israel. To anyone that would hold us down, to anyone that would tell us what to do and how to act and how to think, what to eat.
But life presents a possibility each and every day. I heard a calling that was right for me. I prayed for strength for what's ahead of me. Show me the way.
To all the survivors of the USS Liberty,
Please show me the way. The sun was high and burnt the night away. Who stood before me was my enemy. Don't tread on me. He's come to take away my liberties. I'd rather die than be a slave to thee. Don't treat me this way. I'd rather die than be your slave. I will survive. Can you feel my rage? It's not a question of being brave. I'd rather die than be your slave. They killed my brothers, they lay dead by me. Hit them hard, we made them pay that day. We hung the traitors from the highest trees. Mercy come. Mercy come. Lost a lot of pain was heavy. Sacrifice for God and country. He held the ground that was in front of me. This was the price to pay for liberty. Still you hear me say, I'd rather die than be your slave. I will survive. And you feel my rage. It's not a question of being brave. I'd rather die than be your slave. Our toys have changed while man has stayed the same. Tribal families roll not over me. I will not let them break my liberty. We'll tie them I'm not dying to be your slave. I will survive and kill my grace. It's not a question of being brave. I'd rather fly than be your slave. I'd rather die than be your slave. You know I will survive. I will survive. I'd rather die than be your slave.
All right, now we can go back to Ernie Gallo and his presentation at the National Summit to reassess the U.S.-Israeli special relationship. Let me unmute it.
Spook become a CIA staff officer working with the Office of Communications.
Oops. Sorry
But also become acutely aware of Israelis' actions, past, present, and future, against humanity in Palestine. Did you notice that Paul Pillar, Michael Schroer, and Ray McGovern are all former CIA employees? Well, I spent almost 29 years working with them also. I went from being a Navy spook to become a CIA staff officer working with the Office of Communications. Why do you think there are so many former CIA employees so concerned about the Middle East? Why are we so passionate about what happens in Palestine? I believe it has something to do with love of country. We care. It's part of our culture. As my British friends would say, we bloody well care. Speaking for myself, but I think they feel the same, I sense the calamity that is possible if we continue down our current course. What is the price for caring? Bigotry. I have written a book of some of what I think I will talk about, you will find documented. It is appalling the length Israel's supporters will go to ensure that you are silenced and harassed. However, the U.S.'s liberty story is very important, and it must be told truthfully and accurately. If you'd like a copy, please see me. Before I get into the nitty-gritty about the attack, I need to mention the Moore Commission, which completed its task on October 22, 2003. The commission was made up of Admiral Thomas Moore, U.S. Navy deceased, who was the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Chief of Naval Operations. General Raymond G. Geis, Marine Corps deceased, Medal of Honor recipient, and former Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. Rear Admiral Merlin Starring, U.S. Navy deceased, former Judge Advocate of the Navy from 73 to 75, and Ambassador James Atkins, deceased, former U.S. Ambassador to Saudi Arabia. The mission, findings of the Independent Commission of Inquiry into the Israeli attack on the U.S.'s liberty. The recall of military rescue support aircraft while the ship was under attack, and the subsequent cover-up of the United States government. The Moore Commission is the benchmark identifying the Israeli injustices that our government will not address. I am a Liberty survivor. What does that mean, and how does that work into the reassessment of a relationship with Israel? I survived the 2-hour Israeli attack on the U.S. Naval Intelligence ship USS Liberty AGTR-5. On June 8, 1967, during the Arab-Israeli Six-Day War, Israel tried to sink the ship, attempting to murder the crew of 294 Americans. They launched 5 torpedoes, but our captain, William McGonigal, assertively dodged 4 of them. However, the 5th hit us on our starboard side, just forward of the midships, killing 25 of the 34 Americans. We did not sink, but 2/3 of the crew were incapacitated. There were wounded and dying sailors all over the ship. It was literally a bloodbath. It is miraculously we didn't sink, and I'll say more about that later. A little after 2 p.m., 3 Israeli unmarked fighter jets began strafing the ship with 20-millimeter cannon and rockets, killing the young sailors manning the 50 caliber machine guns. The radioman immediately tried to call for help, discovered all U.S. selected frequencies were jammed. The Israelis knew the frequencies we were attempting to use. Nevertheless, the radioman finally got through to the 6th Fleet. No help was forthcoming that day, as the 6th Fleet had White House orders not to launch aircraft to come to our aid. Next came 2 fighter bombers that dropped napalm canisters on each side of the ship. Even though we were being shot at, the Liberty crew eventually put out the fires. After a brief lull, 3 torpedo boats arrived, strafing the ship with their 40-millimeter cannon and 50-millimeter machine guns. Then they proceeded to drop their torpedoes in the water. One finally did find its mark. Our skipper passed a command to prepare to abandon ship. 3 inflatable life rafts that remained seaworthy were dropped over the side and were machine gunned by the motor torpedo boats. Our life vests were now our only hope for survival, and the more seriously wounded would never survive. However, the engine room was able to bring the boilers back to life, and the Liberty had power. In addition, damage control indicated that the ship stopped taking on water, and the ship came to a 9-degree list to starboard. So our captain wisely decided not to abandon ship. About that time, Israeli helicopters hovered near the ship, and repel boarders were ordered. However, for whatever reason, their attack was called off and all hostilities ceased. I personally risked going topside to ascertain what was happening and saw 2 Israeli helicopters carrying armed Marines. The USS Liberty is currently the most decorated U.S. Navy ship for a single engagement. There were 208 Purple Hearts given alone. The military does not award Purple Hearts, Medal of Honor, Navy Crosses, Silver or Bronze Stars for mere accidents. But that is exactly what the Johnson administration attempted to call it initially. In order to secure the Jewish vote for upcoming elections, they could not have Israel taken the task. This was a major historical event. Any other time, their action would have been an act of war. The event had to be buried quickly, quietly, and without fanfare. Therefore, a couple of actions were taken immediately. The Navy told the Liberty survivors never to talk about the attack to anyone, including our families, or face a $10,000 fine or 10 years imprisonment. What they called a matter-of-fact authoritarian council, they meant business. The Navy would handle the press. In other words, the crew was given a gag order. At the same time, the crew had to be made to feel that everything was okay and being done by the book. So the brave were honored and appropriate medals issued. Everything appeared to be on the up and up. To legally prevent us from future actions, the Navy Court of Inquiry had to come to the conclusion that the sailors did their job to defend the ship, and therefore there could be no court-martial's delay burying the story. The attack had to be declared accidental. It was a masterful job, and the Johnson administration pulled it off. So the White House ordered the court to come to that conclusion, as indicated by the Navy lawyer of the court, Captain Ward Boston, deceased. Before he died, he gave us a sworn affidavit stating that Admiral Kidd and others deliberately ignored the crew's testimony and falsified the evidence. He was also videotaped giving details for this affidavit. In private conversations between Boston and Kidd, they knew the attack was deliberate and stated in the affidavit. They were good Navy officers and kept their secret until 2003. Why is this so important? This is obstruction of justice at the highest level. Let that sink in. I'll say it again. It's obstruction of justice at the highest level. That is, when the crew gave their testimony to the court and shot at firefighters and stretcher bearers. They are all war crimes. We assume their testimony and official logbook data were acquired. No, they were eliminated. Whatever happened to the Uniform Code of Military Justice that all American military were sworn to observe? Now let's fast forward to June 2005. The Bush administration was concerned that war crimes were being committed during the Iraqi war. In order to be non-intimidating, the Pentagon indicated that if anyone witnessed a war crime, a system was created within the Department of the Army to expedite all war crime reports. Therefore, on June 8, 2005, the LVA filed a war crimes report with the Pentagon, and guess what? Nothing happened. We were devastated and appalled as we did everything by the book. We were informed that the 67 Navy Court of Inquiry had already investigated the incident and no action was required. If you write your congressman today, you'll get the same answer. In other words, the 67 Navy Court of Inquiry forms the official basis to explain the attack. The Liberty crew had been slam dunk. Why would the White House do this to the crew? On one hand, exemplified themselves militarily, but on the other hand, had to be contained and diminished. Israel. For example, our skipper, Captain Lee McGonigal, was awarded the Medal of Honor, not by President Johnson at the White House, which is the custom, but at a low-level ceremony at the Washington Navy Yard by the Secretary of the Navy. No press was invited. Are you starting to get the picture? We now know the order came from Maish Dayan. We have declassified CIA cable exposing his order. One of the generals in the room that morning explained, this is pure murder. But they went ahead as the order came from the defense minister. Until an IDF Navy admiral later gave the order to stop the attack as the ship refused to sink. You see, their war plans included taking Syrian territory, the Golan Heights. By June 8th, the IDF had taken out the air forces of Jordan, Egypt, and Syria, captured the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the Sinai, but not the Golan Heights. In the meantime, the Soviets were going crazy as Egypt and Syria were their client states and Israel was kicking their behinds. The Soviet Prime Minister Brezhnev indicated to Johnson that they were ready to enter the war with paratroopers at the ready, and worse if Israel did not stop acquiring their client's land. So Johnson passed that concern back to Israel, insisting that they come to the peace table, ending hostilities. We certainly did not want the Soviets involved. However, Dayan was not finished yet, and the Liberty could be intercepting Israeli military communications, moving troops out of the Sinai to the Syrian border. Secrecy was essential, and he was concerned our intelligence would be shared with our allies friendly to Egypt, and therefore, if found out, Egypt could counterattack and take back the Sinai. In the eyes of the Liberty, in his eyes, the Liberty had to be taken out in order to take the Golan Heights. Going against American guidance on June 9th, Israel took the Golan Heights. We have learned that the Soviet Union was ready to use military force and nuclear weapons had Israel made an attempt to invade Cairo and or Damascus. My point is a belligerent Israel important enough to risk American cities being annihilated by Arab nuclear weapons today? No. The belligerent Israel is not worth it. It is only a matter of time that fanatical Islamics will have nuclear weapons. It may not necessarily be Iran. What if nuclear Pakistan falls into the hands of fanatical Islamics over injustices in Palestine? Fanatical Islamics are not stupid and are analyzing everything we do in the Middle East. In order for Americans to be united when it is absolutely necessary to defend the defense of this wonderful country of ours, we better behave in an upright and honest manner. Protecting a belligerent Israel and its apartheid is not a just ideal. Why can't Congress understand Israel does not want peace in Palestine? Isn't it obvious? Okay, then who is responsible for the dangerous track we are currently traveling? In my opinion, Congress, the mouthpiece of the American public. With that said, our Constitution, With that said, our Constitution states in Article 1, Section 8, that Congress shall investigate all American Navy ships attacked on high seas during peacetime. When the Constitution was written, piracy was a concern. History indicates they have done so for every incident except one, the USS Liberty. Liberty crew, as well as the Liberty supporters, have written and had one-to-one conversation with congressmen about providing justice, not only to the crew, but more importantly, the 34 who were killed in action. For almost 47 years, their response has been empty and dismal. So why is this important? Because our system of checks and balances, an objective and independent Congress, might not come to the same conclusion as the military, which comes under the executive branch, especially if the commander and chief wanted to create a war-like situation or dodge a situation that warrants a military or diplomatic response. The military does not disobey orders from the president. If the president's political controls both houses, then Congress can stand down if so directed. How did our Congress get this way? What happened to our sense of values? I can tell you from negative congressional replies we have received over the years that without the crew's testimony under oath, pertinent information has been buried or destroyed that would prevent an objective and independent investigation. The Liberty crew is not getting any younger, but our memories are clear and honest. Our collective families taught us that to be that way, and that is why some of us were selected to serve in the Naval Security Group. During the interim, the Liberty crew are called anti-Semitic, conspiracy theorists, and worse by Israeli supporters because we refuse to lie about the attack. The Navy League and the American Legion have indicated they favor support for Israel by discriminating against Liberty crew. The bottom line is because of Congress's lack of backbone to investigate the Liberty incident bolsters the bigotry we suffer. I hope I've convinced you that the Liberty story is vitally important, but if not, I want to leave you with a thought. I have stated before that all Navy accounts, the Liberty should have sunk with all hands lost. The torpedo hull alone was 35 by 40 feet, and most of it was below the waterline. The torpedo hit the ship at the only place that would not break apart or explode our boilers. Even with the power of Washington, James Ennis, our division officer, had the courage to write a book and get it published in 1979, despite the Navy's gag order. Do you think that some of the Pentagon knew the Liberty crew was getting shafted and wanted to do the right thing? In conclusion, I must end this with a spiritual note. I have prayed about the attack, and the guidance he provided me is clear realization how important the Liberty story is to our nation, especially since Israel does not want peace. There are 34 Liberty souls who are screaming for justice, not only for them, but also the American public who are being duped today. For their sake, please become aware that most congressmen are reluctant to do anything negative against Israel or have a firm belief that Israel comes first. Americans must take Congress back to objectively do the right thing all the time for America and humanity. For the sake of our grandkids and the pre-67 America we knew, I pray your effort is successful. God bless America.
The last President of the United States of America.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on coveting for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
Everything we want to sit and write in our midst, but we don't really give a fuck. That's the twist. Once you fall into the trap, it's a bit. Somebody took a bullet for your right to exist. When they slide that by you, they give you a rifle for your G.I. Joe. Hold on to your Bible, it's about survival. That is what it's read my flow. Everything is gonna be my way. See, I do not play with the CIA. In the dirt is where they must lay. You see, them motherfuckers murdered JFK. But that was also an outside job, just like 9/11 done by the Mossad. Anybody who had a voice, Martin, Robert, Malcolm, name your choice.
I'm on some wild shit this year. You bet your guns I'm in here. It ain't no fun to this year. I ain't the one to miss here. I'm on some wild shit this year. You bet your guns I'm in here. It ain't no fun to this year. I ain't the one to miss it.
Hey, infiltrated your Patriot radio station. Legal lessons are busy gathering information. This is no way to conduct a Patriot meeting. Council for National Policy is where they're eating. AJ gets no respect. Pretty soon we will host the show with Glenn Beck. How much rat poison is in the tuna fish? When will they turn him into a lunatic? These are questions that I ask myself as I sit back and ponder how vast the wealth. The guy's been cast the last and cast the health. If you think that I'm lying, you should blast yourself. Ted Pipe is a friend of mine. Mr. Jones booked him and then declined. Because he did not want to debate the fact that Israel is a rebel to the state. They call me anti-Semitic. Picture that. If that's true, I'm a Nigerian diplomat. The same old guest, he brings on the chit chat. You sound like pussy. I got a verbal bit for that. Mr. Jones, let me get this right. Jack Blood got bitched out by your wife because he wasn't pushing your material right. I trust Jack Blood with my motherfucking life. Yeah.
My balls are all out this year. It ain't no fun to this year. If you don't trust in this year, you might as well slit your wrist here. My balls are all out this year. Believe I'm way too risk here. When patriots get rich here, you may be on the list here.
That I do not intend to commit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, could interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tight-knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not public. Mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silent, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program. So from that scrutiny comes understanding. From that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help. A tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. So I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy. For it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local.
Payday Monsanto. My friend, Payday. Don't think he's going to be around. He lives in, I think he moved to the West Coast, so, but we had him at the first two Freedom Cruises, and he is now and always will be my friend. Even my mom likes Payday. And for Hammy, what's up, brother? Love and prayers, Britt. Now let's go back to a little more information. Look, man, today is And Jimmy, yes. Brother Jimmy Funk from Boiler Room Radio. I love you, brother, and by extension, I love your mama, too.
In the current environment, no holds barred, no less, national security reporting. And I'm going to do that, but I'm going to take a bank shot, do it, if you don't mind, and talk about two phrases that keep kind of going through my mind when I do my reporting.
This is Mark Perry, the National Summit to reassess the U.S.-Israeli special relationship.
The second phrase is skin in the game. Now, we always hear, and we use the term national interest, and it's an important phrase, but not many people, I don't think, really know what it means when we talk about U.S. national interest. And so we can define it: free markets, free trade, free elections. Wilson's 14 points, the 4 pillars of Roosevelt. But I think that taking a look at reporting, and in one report in particular that kind of struck me and it keeps coming back to me, will help us define national security. Last summer, in the pages of Foreign Policy and in Political, a man by the name of Jonathan Schanzer, who's an official with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, or as I refer to them, the Foundation for the Defense of Israel, wrote an article suggesting that what the President of the United States should do, in particular in the wake of the coup in Egypt, was to pick up the phone and call the Emir of Qatar and lecture him about Qatar's support for Hamas, and tell the Emir that it was time to stop supporting Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamist groups, or the United States would have to rethink its relationship with Qatar. And I read this piece, and I thought, all right, let's suppose that the President Obama reads this piece, which seems improbable, but let's suppose he did, and then he were to actually follow the advice of Jonathan Schanzer of the Foundation for the Defense of Israel and call the Emir of Qatar and say, it's time for you to rethink your relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's time for you to rethink your relationship with Hamas, or by golly, we're going to do whatever. And the Emir of Qatar would say, well, thank you for your call, Mr. President. Certainly going to take that into consideration. I'm going to meet with my cabinet, and I'll get back to you. And then the Emir of Qatar, I just envision this, you can tell me if I'm wrong, would pick up the phone and he'd call the chairman of the board of the Exxon Mobil Corporation. And he'd say, I just got a call from the President of the United States, and maybe I'm out of line here, but I got lectured by him, and I'm wondering what you think about that. And the chairman of the board of ExxonMobil would say, well, it's a very interesting phone call. Let me talk to my government relations people in Washington and give me a few days, and I'll get back to you. And then he would probably call the President of the United States. I'm just hypothesizing. And he would say, Mr. President, there are 89,000 jobs in Texas dependent on a contract with the Emir of Qatar. That's our national interest. Jobs, trade, putting Americans to work. The U.S. Central Command, which protects U.S. and other shipping in the Persian Gulf, was formed in 1983 by President Ronald Reagan. Not to counter Iran, but to protect American shipping with a little old country, Qatar, because the then Exxon Corporation had signed a $50 billion contract with Qatar to ship natural gas to ports in Texas, which is the national interest. Not destroying Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. Free markets, free trade, free elections is the national interest. And those countries that can serve the national interests are our friends.
The second phrase, now that's how I define national interest. And the second phrase is skin in the game. It's a pretty crude phrase. I'm sure you've heard it. It's used in the Pentagon all the time. When they talk about, when the military talks about the wars that they have fought and are fighting or might fight, and they talk about who America's friends are and who aren't America's friends, and how they sell the war or don't sell the war, how they support the war or don't support a war on Capitol Hill. And regularly, I will hear a colonel say, you know, the people we really respect when it comes to talk about war are those people with skin in the game. That is, who are willing to sacrifice their lives of their soldiers and their national treasure in protecting their national interest. And unless you have skin in the game, you don't count for much with the U.S. military. That's what skin in the game means. And I heard my friend Gareth Porter here this morning talking about a prospective war against Iran. And the skin in the game here would be U.S. skin and not Israel's. Now, the President of the United States gave a State of the Union address, and during his State of the Union address, he said that the Senate was considering a sanctions bill against Iran, that if it came to his desk, he would veto it. And the next day, after he gave that speech, if you'll recall, 3 of the major co-sponsors of that bill dropped off the bill. What happened? Did the president's words scare the senior senator from Connecticut? Was Senator Menendez cowed by President Barack Obama? Or was it that there were a series of briefings on the Hill, very quick briefings, from the U.S. military, which has skin in the game, that said that the United States war against Iran would last 90 days and that we would prevail in such a conflict and would cost us $2 billion a day, 5,000 American lives, and probably 2 destroyers. And that it would not be a campaign of shock and awe, but an ugly, bloody confrontation. Did the Senate think that when the military didn't want to go to war over Syria, it would somehow want to go to war with Iran? That's skin in the game. So my focus in reporting over the last 3 years in a series of articles that began in March of 2010 have focused on national interest and skin in the game. And in March of 2010, I learned that General David Petraeus, who is the head of the U.S. Central Command, had been wandering through some of the towns and cities of Iraq during the surge, and when he went into many Iraqi homes, he would see a big picture in the living room, many Iraqi homes, of the holy sanctuary in Jerusalem. And invariably, the male of the family would say, you know, the Palestinian issue really, and he kept hearing it, and he kept hearing it. He went to his staff, this is General Petraeus, the smartest guy in the room, and he said, this Israeli-Palestinian thing is really a big deal here, isn't it? Telling you the truth. It kind of was starting to dawn on him as the head of the U.S. Central Command that the Israeli-Palestinian issue was providing an obstacle to the resolution of political problems in the Middle East. So he sent his staff out to visit the military staffs of his area of responsibility, the Arab countries' area of responsibility, and they said the primary obstacle to the respect for America and American ideals and American national interest was the failure of the United States to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Fail. Wah, 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 wah. Yeah, to end the Israeli conflict with Palestine. Palestine's not allowed to be a state. They're not allowed to have their own elections. They're not recognized as a state. They're not allowed to have a military. How can they defend themselves? How can you say it's war? Well, 4 boys on a beach. It's war. It's not frickin' war. That's not war. That's a big prison, and that's the way inmates are treated. We can deal with one struggle at a time, I guess. Right? And a lot of these Mexican brothers and sisters have their own struggle. When we talk an awful lot about frickin' borders, but do we talk about people? Pardon me, and we all agree borders are political, even though there always have been borders all the way back to city-states. Even tribes in the jungle have borders, maybe not fenced, borders, and that's bullcrap. And I'm not talking about MS-13 or any of that. I'm talking about the people, other people. And quite frankly, there is the struggles are from, it's all about the struggle. That's it. And, we can sit here and bitch and moan and talk about the Constitution and the border, but then again, it's the struggle. It's the struggle of free people, whether they're Mexican, whether they're brown, whether they're white, or black, and it doesn't matter where they are. It's their struggle for dignity, for the rights of all humanity, not just rights that are enumerated on a piece of frickin' paper. Listen, man, I apologize for being so, lack of effort today, just playing something, but it was that, or I had every intentions of hanging out, but it's just the way things happened this weekend. So don't forget the struggle. Don't forget, fuck the movement. Don't forget the struggle. The movement. The movement's all about fleecing people for money. The struggle for humanity, for dignity, for freedom. That we all want, that we all should have, that we all can have. If we get together, fight the frickin' Jew. No, I'm just kidding. But there are things. The practice of usury, it needs to be outlawed. The Zionist white supremacist settler state of Israel and the UN need to be outlawed. All right, guys, thanks. This is UCY Media Network.
People, we're being led by leaders who are godless, who are lawless. All right, don't let them bully them thinking you're lawless and you don't have to care. They can call it whatever they want, but they can't make us hate.
I'd rather die than be a slave to thee. Don't treat me this way. I'd rather